From now on, Mum, the bank will transfer your pension straight into my account. You don't need anything anymore, you just need a corner to die in.
My throat tightened, and I couldn't say a word. But that night, when he opened the refrigerator, he froze, then started screaming. His scream tore through the silence of the house, sharp as a blade slicing through old cloth. It was so loud that all the dogs in the neighborhood began barking wildly, as if they sensed a disaster unfolding. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Martha, turned on her porch light. I heard Mr. Harris's gate creak open. The whole neighborhood woke up, yet I stayed seated in my rocking chair on the back porch, wrapped in the wool shawl my mother had knitted 40 years ago, staring at the stars above me. 1, 2, 3. I lost count when the screaming started again. And for the first time, in 67 years of living, I smiled because someone was finally screaming because of me. You might wonder, what kind of mother smiles when her own son screams like that? What kind of woman just sits there, rocking calmly, while chaos erupts inside her home? Let me tell you. The kind of woman who's been crushed for 3 long months. The kind of woman who's been turned into a shadow inside her own house. A woman whose money was stolen, whose dignity was trampled, and whose voice was silenced by her own flesh and blood. The story I'm about to tell you, with my heart still aching and my hands still trembling from suppressed rage, didn't begin that night of screaming. It began 3 months earlier, on the day I buried my husband, and unknowingly buried my freedom with him. But before I take you down that dark road, I need to ask you one thing. Subscribe to this channel, because stories like mine need to be told, to be heard, and to serve as a warning to women who are living quietly with the same kind of pain. Go ahead, click that red button, because you'll want to hear how it ends. I promise you that. Now, let me take you back to the day everything started to fall apart. It was a gloomy Thursday morning in July when we lowered the coffin into the ground. The sky was gray and heavy, carrying the grief of every widow on earth. I wore a simple black dress I had bought in a hurry from a store downtown because in 42 years of marriage, I had never needed mourning clothes. Michael, my husband, had always been too stubborn to die until his heart decided it couldn't take it anymore. Heart attack, the doctor said. Quick, painless, without a goodbye. He'd been fixing the fence in the backyard that Monday morning. When I called him in for lunch, I found him lying on the grass, a pair of pliers still in his hand. During the funeral, people came to hug me, saying all the familiar phrases, "He's in a better place now. God has his reasons. Stay strong, Rachel." I felt torn in two. Part of me grieved deeply for the breakfasts we'd never share again, for the silly arguments over TV shows, for the faint scent of him, still clinging to his pillow. 42 years can't be erased in a single moment. We had taken root in each other, even if sometimes those roots hurt. But the other half of me, the part I feel guilty admitting, felt relieved. Michael was a good man, hardworking, never harsh or violent. But he was controlling. Every cent in the house was under his supervision, as if my work, my efforts, didn't count. For decades, I was a public school teacher. I retired with a worn-out back and a hoarse voice from years of teaching. Yet my pension went into his account, and he'd hand me $800 a month for household expenses, and for myself. $800, like pocket money for a child. Whenever I wanted a new pair of shoes, a dress, or a lipstick from the drugstore, he'd frown. "Do you really need it, Rachel? We should save." Save for what? I never knew. The house was paid. Off. No debts. But he held on to money like someone guarding water in a desert, afraid one day it would run dry. And when he died, I felt the hollow space he left behind. The lawyer handling the estate, Mrs. Esther, a refined woman with silver glasses and the faint scent of expensive perfume, called me to her office 2 weeks after the funeral. She opened a brown folder, her voice professional, almost detached. I didn't understand everything, but some numbers snapped me awake. Our house in the suburbs of Dallas was valued at $680,000 debt-free, mortgage-free. And the most important detail, Michael had put everything in my name in his will, something I hadn't known. "Your husband wanted to make sure you'd be protected," Mrs. Esther said, adjusting her glasses. He even added a note, saying that if your son ever tried to claim your assets, the entire estate would go to charity instead. I froze. Michael had never said anything, but now that I thought about it, I remembered how he always avoided giving money to our son, David. He never trusted him. There's more, Mrs. Esther continued. His savings, life insurance, and retirement funds total $127,000, all yours. I was speechless. $127,000, a house worth nearly $700,000, and a monthly pension of more than $3,000. For the first time in my life, I was the owner of my own existence. I left the office on trembling legs, my heart pounding not from joy, but from the unfamiliar rush of freedom. The strange, thrilling, and slightly terrifying feeling of being able to decide for myself, buy what I wanted, go where I pleased, live how I chose. But I soon learned that freedom is fragile, especially when someone's waiting to steal it from you. That afternoon, I stood in the living room, looking at the old furniture, faded curtains, and bulky, outdated TV. I thought about redecorating, about traveling, about that deep blue sofa I'd seen in the furniture store, the one that cost $2,800 and had haunted my dreams. I smiled at the thought, but my smile faded quickly, because just 2 days later, the doorbell rang. And when I opened the door, there he was, David, my only son, standing with 2 big suitcases, a backpack, and that crooked smile he always wore when he wanted something. "Hi, Mom," he said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. "I'm staying for a few days. We need to talk." And just like that, with 2 suitcases and 1 fake smile, hell walked into my home. You want to know why he came back? Why now? And what happened when he found out I had money? Stay with me, because the worst is yet to come. David never showed up without a reason. In the past 10 years, he'd visited me maybe 6 times. Always in a hurry, always with an excuse. He lived in Houston, just a few hours' drive away, but the distance between us was far greater, an ocean of silence and broken promises. At his father's funeral, he showed up late. The service had already started when he walked in, wearing a wrinkled shirt and jeans, like he'd just rolled out of bed. He didn't cry. He stood at the back with his arms crossed, occasionally glancing at his phone. When it was over, he gave me a half-hearted hug and said, "If you need anything, call me. I'll stay for a few days to help." But he didn't. The next morning, he was gone, said he had an important interview. He didn't help me with the paperwork or stay with me through those suffocatingly lonely nights. And yet, 2 weeks later, he came back with luggage in hand. "Jessica kicked me out," he said, tossing his bags on the couch like he still lived there. "We had a big fight. She told me to leave." Jessica was the 3rd woman I'd heard about, though I'd never met any of them. I only knew their names from the blurry photos he sent and the stories he told when he needed to borrow money. "What about work?" I asked, standing by the door. He shrugged, opened the fridge, and drank orange juice straight from the bottle. "Didn't work out. The boss promised $3,200, but the contract said only $1,800. I'm not an idiot. I quit." My stomach sank. I'd heard this story too many times. David always had a reason for being unemployed. The boss was unfair, the pay too low, the hours too long, the company unstable. I wanted to ask, "So what have you been doing for the past 5 months? Why didn't you call me?" But I didn't. I already knew the answer. He only remembered me when he needed something. "Do as you like," I said, forcing a smile. "Your room's still the same. The small back room with a single bed, a creaky dresser, and the old band posters still stuck to the walls from his teenage years. I'd never taken them down. Maybe, deep down, I still hoped he'd come home as the boy he once was. But the man who walked in that day wasn't that boy anymore. He was 38 now, his belly softening, his hair thinning, dark circles under his eyes. He dropped his bags on the floor, fell onto the bed without even taking off his shoes. "I just need some time to get back on track, Mom. A few days." A few days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. And me, as always, I let it happen. At first, I was glad to have someone around. The house had felt too empty since Michael died. I often woke in the middle of the night, reaching for him before remembering he was gone. That emptiness swallowed me whole. Having David there, the sound of the TV late at night, the smell of reheated food in the kitchen made me feel less alone. Though most of the time, he just stayed in his room or sprawled across the couch, watching videos on his phone at a volume that made my head throb. I cooked for him, did his laundry, cleaned up his mess. Every time he ate without a thank you, left dirty dishes in the sink, or complained the food was bland, I swallowed my anger and told myself, he's going through a hard time, be patient. Then came the requests. Mom, can I borrow $850? Need some work clothes for interviews. I gave it. Mom, my phone broke. Need a new one to job hunt. Around $1,200. I gave it. Mom, my scooter broke down, repairs cost $620. I gave it again. Each time, he'd say, I'll pay you back, Mom, once I get a job. But the job never came, and the money never returned. Mrs. Esther had already transferred the full $127,000 into my savings account. I printed the statement and kept it in a blue folder, along with my mother's jewelry and important documents. Every night before bed, I'd open that blue folder and look at the numbers. $127,000. It was a kind of safety I'd never known, a chance to live the rest of my life with dignity, proof that I still mattered. But each time David asked for money, that number shrank. $126,150. Then $124,950. Then less. He didn't even blink when asking for more. One evening, as I was washing dishes after dinner, David walked into the kitchen, sat down, and started scrolling through his phone. He stayed silent for a while, then said, without looking up, Mom, we need to talk about your finances. My hands froze under the faucet. My finances? I repeated slowly. Yeah. How much do you still have in your savings? Around $100,000? My heart stopped. How did he know? David, that's none of your business. He laughed softly, coldly. None of my business? I'm your son. The only one you have. If you die tomorrow, where does that money go? The church? Some stranger? I turned, wiping my hands on a towel. I'm not dying, David. But you will eventually, Mom. You're 67, living alone, anything could happen. His tone carried no concern, no care, only calculation. Like he was already measuring how much time I had left. A chill ran down my spine. I'm fine, David. I don't need anyone to manage my life. He shrugged, still not looking up. Whatever, Mom. Just saying you should get things in order. It's for your own good. Then he left the kitchen, while I stood there, my hands trembling, my chest tight. That was the first time I realized I was afraid of my own son. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought of Michael, of the clause in his will, of whether he had seen in David what I refused to believe. I clutched the pillow that still smelled faintly of his cologne and cried quietly, afraid David might hear. I knew then my freedom had an expiration date, and time was running out. But what exactly was David planning? How far would he go? Why, every time I looked at him, did I see a stranger wearing my son's face? Stay with me, because the descent into that darkness was only beginning. Those first few weeks with David felt like living with a noisy ghost. He took up space without truly being there. He woke late, usually after 11 a.m., and shuffled into the kitchen in shorts, shirtless, eyes still swollen from sleep. He'd open the fridge and stare into it, as if expecting the food to jump out on its own. He took whatever he wanted, the yogurt I bought for the week, the slice of cheese I'd been saving, the last piece of cake, and ate it right there, no plate, no napkin, never asked, never thanked. I stood by the sink pretending to wash a cup that was already clean, just so I wouldn't have to look at him, because every time I did, a slow, burning anger rose in my throat. An anger I couldn't name, because a mother isn't supposed to be angry at her son. A mother is supposed to love, to be patient, to forgive. But patience has limits, and mine was running out. David spent his days scrolling the internet, watching videos, or playing games on the old computer he'd brought. Whenever I asked about finding a job, he'd say, I've sent out a few applications, I'm waiting to hear back. but no one ever called, or if they did, he wasn't satisfied. They offered me warehouse work, $16 an hour. Are they kidding? I finished high school, have sales experience, worked with important people. I'm not lowering myself like that. I bit my lip. Lowering himself? I wanted to ask, you're unemployed, living off your mother, eating food bought with her pension. What's lower than that? But I stayed silent. I just turned back to the stove, stirring the pot of beans, because I still had hope. Hope that it was just a phase, that one morning he'd wake up and change. But hope is dangerous. It makes you endure the unbearable for far too long. That Friday night, the insults began. I cooked rice, beans, sautéed beef with onions, and tomato salad. A simple meal, made with love. I set the table, called him, and sat down. He came over, eyes still glued to his phone, sat, stabbed a piece of meat, chewed slowly, then frowned. "Mom, the meat's tough." I froze. "Tough?" "Yeah, you overcooked it." I looked at the meat on my own plate, tender, flavorful, perfectly fine. "It tastes good to me, David." He shrugged and tossed the half-chewed piece back onto his plate. "Maybe to you, but I'm not eating it." He got up, phone in hand, and walked to the living room. The TV blared seconds later. He was probably ordering pizza or a burger on an app again. I sat there, staring at the meal I'd cooked with all my heart. My eyes stung not because he criticized the food, but because of the ingratitude, the cold cruelty that had become so casual. I ate alone, in silence, each bite heavy as stone. The days that followed were filled with more complaints. "Mom, the Wi-Fi sucks. Upgrade it." "Mom, the house feels like an oven. Turn on the air conditioning." "Mom, buy better coffee. This brand is too weak." Whenever I tried to explain that I could only afford that Wi-Fi plan, that running the AC all day would hike up the power bill, that I'd been drinking this coffee for years, he'd sigh impatiently, as if I were a stubborn child who just didn't understand. Little by little, David took over the house not to take care of it, but to rule it. He'd change the TV channel while I was watching a movie, spread his work things across the kitchen table so I had to eat on the couch, leave dirty clothes all over the bathroom, use my towels, drink juice straight from the jug. Whenever I gently said something afraid he'd think I was nagging, he'd reply, "Come on, Mom, this is my house too." But it wasn't. It was mine, and he knew that. One morning, as I was sweeping the porch, my neighbor Martha leaned over the fence, her tone curious. "Rachel, is David living with you now?" I forced a smile. "Just temporarily. He's getting his life together." She shook her head, eyes glinting knowingly. "Men near 40 don't get their life together, dear. They get comfortable, and then they stay." My face burned not because of her, but because she was right. Everyone would think the same, that I was the foolish old woman letting her lazy son come back and drain the rest of her life away. "He's my son, Martha. I can't throw him out." She gave a thin smile. "Mothers never throw their sons out, but sons can throw their mothers away. Remember that." She went back inside, leaving me there holding my broom and a heavy heart. That night, after washing the pile of dishes David had ignored, I went to my room and opened the blue folder. Balance, $119,430. Less than a month, and nearly $8,000 had vanished. Interview clothes, gas, computer repairs, back pain medicine. There was always a reason, always an emergency. And me, I always gave in because I was afraid. Afraid he'd leave and never come back. Afraid of being truly alone. Afraid of dying in this house and only being found when the neighbors smelled decay. I was buying my son's presents with my own money, and he took it without an ounce of guilt. I closed the folder, hugged my pillow, and cried myself to sleep. But worse was still coming. A week later, on a Saturday afternoon, David opened my bedroom door without knocking. His face was serious. He dragged the chair from my vanity, sat across from me with his legs spread and his hands on his knees. "Mom, we need to talk seriously." My stomach went cold. "About what?" He took a deep breath, his tone heavy. "About your money. about this house, about the future. You can't keep living like this with no plan, no structure. Now that I'm here, I'll take care of everything." And right then, the abyss opened. I realized I was living with a stranger, and a dangerous one. In life, there are moments when you realize you've lost control. Not loudly, not clearly, but quietly, like sand slipping through your fingers. The more you try to hold on, the faster it falls away. I was living that moment and didn't even know it yet. David sat in front of me on the old creaky chair. His expression was stern, almost paternal, as if about to deliver some great wisdom. "You're 67, Mom," he began slowly. "Your memory isn't what it used to be. That's normal." Pain struck my chest. "My memory's fine, David." He gave me a pitying smile, the kind doctors give stubborn patients. "I know you think so, but haven't you noticed you've been forgetting things lately? You left the gas stove on the other day. Last week you left your keys in the door. Older people are easy targets, Mom. Anyone could take advantage of you." I was about to respond, but he continued, not giving me a chance. "Now that I'm here, I can help. I'm your son. Let me help you. We'll reorganize your finances, put everything under one plan. You'll feel safer, and so will I." His words sounded reasonable, even gentle. But something was wrong, something vague, twisting in my gut. "What do you mean? Reorganize?" I asked, my voice small. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "First, we should combine everything into one account, your savings, your pension, everything. I'll take care of it all, Mom. Pay the bills, buy groceries, manage everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." My heart started to pound. "But I can still manage, David. I've been doing it alone." "I know, but it's tiring. You should relax and enjoy your golden years. Let me handle it. Relax and enjoy your golden years." As if I were some senile old woman who couldn't tie her own shoes. He didn't wait for an answer. The next morning, I was woken by knocking on my door. "Mom, get up. We have to go to the bank." I made an appointment. I was still in my pajamas, blinking at the clock on my nightstand. "What time, David?" "Now. The branch manager's only free this morning." "Get dressed." I could have said no. Could have locked the door and gone back to bed. But I didn't. Because mothers always listen to their sons, right? They don't question. They trust. How foolish. At the bank, David led me down the hallway like a child lost in a mall. He gripped my arm, practically pushing me forward. The manager, a man around 30, in a navy blue suit and striped tie, greeted us politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Rachel. Your son explained everything. You'd like to give him power of attorney over your account, correct?" My mouth opened, then closed again. I looked at David, who placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's just for convenience, Mom. I'll handle everything so you don't have to go to the bank anymore," the manager added. "With this authorization, he can transfer funds, pay bills, withdraw money, everything on your behalf. It's very common in families, especially when parents get older." Older. The word hit me like a brick. I wasn't disabled or senile. I was 67, not 90. I still drove, cooked, cleaned. But in that room, everyone looked at me like I was helpless. I need to think about it." David squeezed my shoulder so hard it hurt. "Mom, we're already here. Just sign it." The manager slid the pen across the desk, and I foolish signed. When we left the bank, David was beaming, like he'd just won a prize. He stopped by a bakery nearby, bought coffee and a cheese roll, and handed them to me as if we were celebrating. "It's all set now, Mom. Everything's organized. You can relax." But I couldn't relax. My throat felt tight, my hands cold even in the August heat. I wanted to cry, though I didn't know why. When we got home, David went straight to his computer. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at Martha hanging laundry just as I'd done that morning. 2 days later, he walked into the kitchen while I was peeling potatoes. Leaning against the fridge with his arms crossed, he dropped the bomb. "Mom, I talked to the bank. Starting next month, your pension will be deposited directly into my account. It'll be easier that way." The knife slipped from my hand, clattering onto the floor. "What?" "It's better, Mom. I'll pay the bills, buy what we need, take care of everything. You don't need anything except a place to rest. Rest, that word again. But this time, it sounded different, like erasure, like an ending. David, that money is mine. He sighed in irritation. I know, Mom, but I'll manage it now. It's for your own good. For my own good. I swallowed hard, wanting to scream, to rip up those papers, to run to the bank and undo everything, but I did nothing. I just stood there, gripping the edge of the sink as the world around me collapsed, because I had just given away my freedom to my own son. From that day on, everything changed. David took control of everything. He did the grocery shopping, always choosing the cheapest items and the smallest quantities. When I asked him to buy something, he rolled his eyes. You don't need that, Mom. We have to save. Save with my money. He changed the Wi-Fi password and refused to tell me, saying I wasted data watching videos. He started monitoring the electricity, complaining whenever I left the kitchen light on. Electric bills are expensive, Mom. Be careful. I felt like a stranger in my own home. At the end of the month, he called me into the living room and handed me 4 $100 bills. Here, Mom, your allowance. I looked at the cash in his hand like it was fake. Allowance? Yeah. $400 for your personal needs. If you need more, let me know. 400. While my pension was over 3,000 and my savings over 100,000. David, I need more than that. For what, Mom? You don't go out. I cover everything. That's plenty. I took the money with trembling hands, went to my room, locked the door, and cried. I cried out of anger, humiliation, and fear. I had become a prisoner in my own life. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I thought about Michael, my late husband, who used to control our finances, hand me money like a child's allowance, decide what was worth buying. For 42 years, I had dreamed of freedom, and when I finally had it, I handed it over to another man. The only difference was that Michael, strict as he was, loved me. We built a life together. But David, he was just using me, and I let him. How could I be so foolish? And would he ever stop, or was this only the beginning? Stay with me, because the abyss had no bottom yet. There's a difference between living and merely existing. I learned that the cruel way. Living is when you wake up with purpose, when you can choose what to eat, what to wear, where to go. When you have a voice. Existing is when you're just another object in the house taking up space, but meaningless. That was me then, a woman merely existing in her own home. The first weeks after David took control of the money were a series of small humiliations that built an invisible prison slowly tightening around me. He controlled everything from the groceries to my daily life. He always bought the cheapest rice, sticky and mushy, beans full of pebbles I had to pick through, my back aching, the cheapest cuts of meat, tough and gristly. Just saving, Mom. You don't eat much anyway. I still had all my teeth, still strong, but he talked as if I were too old to chew. One day, I asked him to buy a jar of olives. I had always loved olives, but Michael hated them, so for 42 years, I never bought any. Now that he was gone, I thought I finally could. Olives? David scoffed. That's extravagant, Mom. We can't afford fancy stuff like that. Can't afford it? I said, my voice sharper than usual. David, I have over $100,000 in my account. He looked at me with the same irritated expression adults use with children. You used to, Mom. Now I'm using it wisely for our future. Our future. As if his future were being built on my money. I never bought the olives. And after that, I stopped asking for anything at all. My friends stopped visiting. Vanda, my closest friend for over 30 years, still called every week, inviting me out for lunch, coffee, or just a chat. But every time I agreed, David came up with an excuse. Mom, it's too hot out right now. Your blood pressure could spike. Rest, maybe next time. Until one day he answered the phone himself and said in that soft, caring voice, Hi, Vanda. My mom's not feeling well lately. She's been very tired. When she's better, I'll let you know. Then he hung up. I was sitting less than 10 feet away. I wasn't tired. I wasn't sick. I was perfectly fine. But he decided I was ill, and Vanda believed him. Because sons don't lie about their mother's health, right? After that, she stopped calling, and I sank deeper into loneliness. Whenever someone knocked, the neighbor Martha, the mail carrier, anyone, David was always the one to answer. He'd open the door just a crack, blocking the entrance with his body, and say quickly, "My mom's resting. She can't have visitors right now," as if I were disabled, too frail to say hello. I watched from my bedroom window, saw it all, felt the slow burn of anger rise, but I couldn't do anything. I couldn't yell, couldn't push the door open and shout, "I'm here. I'm alive!" Because a part of me had already broken, and I didn't know how to fix it. His control didn't stop with the money or the phone calls. He began deciding what I could wear. One morning, I put on a floral dress I'd bought long ago but never worn. It was light and lovely, and for the first time in months, I felt like a woman again. I looked in the mirror and smiled. When I walked downstairs, David looked me up and down and smirked. "Where are you going, Mom?" "Nowhere. I just wanted to wear it." He shook his head, scrolling through his phone. "Floral dresses at your age look ridiculous. You should dress more modestly, appropriately." My face burned with shame. I went back upstairs, changed into an old blouse, and looked into the mirror again, but I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Pale, faded, invisible, exactly what David wanted me to become. But the worst came when I discovered what he had done with my money. One afternoon, David went out to run errands, leaving his computer open on the table. I was mopping the floor when the screen lit up. Normally, I never snooped, but something pulled me closer. On the screen was a WhatsApp web chat with a building supply seller, confirming the order. Luxury hardwood flooring, premium wall paint, imported faucets. Total, $12,400. Delivery address, 428 Rose Street, apartment 301. My heart froze. I knew that address. It was a new building in one of the city's most expensive neighborhoods. David had once mentioned he was investing in an apartment there, investing with my money. I opened his browser history. The more I saw, the tighter my chest grew. Custom furniture invoices, a $900 refrigerator receipt, an $18,000 transfer to an electronics store, and another $23,600 to a construction company. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the mouse. Over $50,000. $50,000 gone from my savings to decorate an apartment he had never dared to mention. I collapsed onto the sofa, my legs weak, heart pounding, head spinning. I wanted to vomit. He wasn't managing my finances, he was robbing me, and the worst part was, I had let him. I had signed the papers. I had handed the keys to the thief myself. When David came home hours later, I was still sitting there. He tossed his keys on the table, opened the fridge. "Mom, is there anything to eat?" I couldn't answer. My throat locked up. He grabbed a container of leftovers, microwaved it, ate while scrolling his phone, left the dirty plate on the counter, and went to his room. I stayed there, staring at nothing. That night, lying in bed, I thought about giving up, letting him take it all, letting him do whatever he wanted. Maybe it would be easier just close my eyes, accept it, and wait until my body couldn't take it anymore. What could I even do? Fight him, a 38-year-old man, strong, clever, sharper than me. What would I tell the police, that I'd signed over power of attorney and now regretted it? They'd laugh. I thought I had no way out. But sometimes, when you hit rock bottom, you have only two choices: sink completely or push yourself back up. And my moment was coming. Stay with me, because change was closer than I realized. Have you ever felt yourself disappearing? Not all at once, but little by little each day, another piece of you fades away. First your voice, then your joy, then the will to get out of bed. Until one day, you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's looking back. I was disappearing, and no one noticed, or worse, no one cared. It had been nearly 2 months since David took control of my life. 2 months of living on $400 of allowance, eating cheap food, wearing old clothes, trapped inside my own house like a criminal. I'd lost over 15 pounds. My clothes hung loose, my hip bones jutted out, my eyes were sunken, the dark circles never faded. Every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd let it come to this, wondering how much money he had spent, and whether I'd ever be brave enough to fight back. But whenever I imagined confronting him, my body froze, as if my spine had been pulled out and only a fragile shell remained, until that Wednesday morning at the supermarket. David was out taking care of business, which I knew meant spending more of my money on his secret apartment. Before leaving, he handed me a note and a $20 bill. "Mom, buy laundry detergent and sponges. If there's anything left, get some bread." $20 for detergent, sponges, and bread. I took it silently, waited for the door to close, then put on my worn-out coat, grabbed my tote bag, and walked out. There wasn't a bus stop nearby, so I walked 13 blocks under the September sun, sweat soaking my back, but the simple act of leaving the house made me feel lighter than I had in months. At the store, I bought the cheapest detergent, $8.90 sponges for $1.50, and had less than $10 left for half a pound of bread. I was waiting in line when I heard someone call my name. "Rachel?" I turned slowly. "Vanda." My old friend from the public school where we used to teach. She was 64, 3 years younger than me, but looked 20 years younger. Blonde hair neatly cut, a soft blouse, new jeans. She pushed a cart full of groceries, fresh fruit, yogurt, cheese, wine, and me with only detergent and sponges. Her eyes swept over me from head to toe, her face changing. "Oh my God, Rachel, you've lost so much weight." I forced a smile. "I'm on a diet." A lie. I wasn't dieting, I was starving. Starving for food, for freedom, for life. She frowned, lowered her voice. "A diet? You look gaunt. And what's with these clothes? You never went out like this. What's going on?" My eyes stung. I bit my lip, fighting the urge to cry. I couldn't break down in a grocery store. "I'm fine, Vanda. Just a rough patch." She didn't believe me. She grabbed my hand. "We're talking right now." She paid for her groceries, covered my bread too, and pulled me into the cafe across the street. She ordered 2 lattes and a slice of carrot cake, pushed it toward me. "Eat." "I'm not hungry." "Eat, Rachel, before I have to feed you myself." I picked up the fork and took a small bite. Sweet, soft, fragrant. I nearly cried at the taste, something I hadn't felt in months. Vanda crossed her arms, her tone firm. "Now, talk. And don't give me any diet nonsense. What's happening?" I wanted to deflect, to lie, but her eyes saw right through me, and I broke. I told her everything: the power of attorney, the financial control, the $400 allowance, the cheap food, the cut-off friends, the secret apartment, the $50,000 gone. By the time I finished, I was crying, wiping my face with a napkin soaked through with tears. Vanda was silent for a moment, then said, "You're housing a parasite, Rachel." "No, he's my son." "No, he's a parasite. And worse, you're letting him feed on you." I looked up, eyes red and swollen. "I'm not letting him, I just don't know what to do." She leaned closer, voice calm but firm. "You do know. You're just afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid he'll leave. So you let him hurt you, as long as he stays close. But that's not love, Rachel. That's abuse." I broke down again because she was right. I was terrified of being alone. I was terrified that if I fought back, I'd lose my only child forever. But I began to wonder, was he still my son? Or just a stranger wearing his face, destroying me from the inside out? Vanda cupped my face, forcing me to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. You don't have to endure abuse just because he's your son. A child who doesn't respect his mother doesn't deserve one. Now you have to fight back." "But how?" I signed the papers, gave him everything. Power of attorney can be revoked. "We're going to see a lawyer today." A chill ran through me, a mix of fear and hope. What if he finds out? What if he loses his temper? No what-ifs, Rachel. Do you plan to die slowly in that house? Fade away until there's nothing left but ashes? No. I didn't want that. And for the first time in months, I felt a spark inside me. Not despair, anger. Small, but alive, growing. "You know a lawyer," Vanda said. "His name's Richard Hayes. He's excellent. His office is downtown. I'm calling him right now." She dialed the number and booked an appointment for an hour later. Richard's office was small but tidy, smelling faintly of fresh coffee. He looked about 50, with salt and pepper hair and glasses hanging on his chest. His handshake was firm, his smile kind. Vanda explained everything while I handed over the documents I had managed to hide: the copy of the authorization, bank statements, and the notes I'd secretly kept of David's expenses. Richard read each page carefully, then removed his glasses and looked at me. "You're a victim of financial exploitation and abuse," he said. "This is a criminal offense." My heart pounded. "A crime?" "Yes. He's been using your money for his own benefit without your consent. Power of attorney doesn't mean permission to steal. But he's my son." "So what?" His tone was firm but not harsh. "No one has the right to steal from their mother. No one." For the first time, I felt someone stand on my side, that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't exaggerating. What should I do now? Step 1. Revoke the authorization. Step 2. File a formal complaint. Step 3. Block all his access to your accounts. Step 4. Reclaim what's yours. I turned to Vanda. She smiled and squeezed my hand. "Everything's going to be okay." And for me, the first time in so long, I truly believed it. The fox inside me had finally awakened, and it was ready to bite back. My mother used to say, "Dogs that bark don't bite." She was right. The dangerous ones are quiet, they wait. I had been screaming silently for months, trapped in an invisible cage. But now, I was quiet, a dangerous kind of quiet, because the fox had awakened, and foxes never warn before they strike. I left Richard's office with 3 things: a plan, a formal complaint in progress, and something I thought I'd lost forever: determination. Vanda drove me home, talking non-stop. "Be smart. Move fast, but keep it secret. Don't let him suspect a thing. Pretend nothing's changed. Be the sweet old lady he thinks you are." I nodded, looking out the window as we passed familiar streets, old houses, the park where I used to play as a child. Everything looked the same except me. When the car stopped in front of my house, Vanda grabbed my hand before I could. "Get out." "Rachel, are you sure? Because if you start this and back out halfway, he'll crush you." I looked her straight in the eyes and answered firmly, my voice steadier than it had been in years. "I'm sure." David was sitting on the couch when I walked in, a plate of expensive lasagna balanced on his lap, the kind of food he bought just for himself, while I ate plain rice with eggs. He didn't even look at me, eyes glued to the TV. "Took you long enough, Mom? Did you get the stuff I asked for?" "Yes," I lied. I had left the detergent and sponges at Vanda's house. "They're in the kitchen." He muttered something and turned back to his show. I went upstairs, closed the door quietly, and took a deep breath to calm myself. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my throat and temples. I sat on the bed, took out the instruction sheet that Attorney Richard had given me, read it 3 times until I memorized every step, then tore it into pieces and flushed them down the toilet. No one could know about this. The first step was to revoke the power of attorney, but to do that, I had to go to the bank while David wasn't home. The next morning, he left early, saying he had things to handle and wouldn't be back until afternoon. I waited a few extra minutes just to be sure, then put on my neatest clothes, a touch of lipstick, brushed my hair, and looked in the mirror. For the first time in months, I saw a real woman again, not a silent shadow. The bank was packed. I took a number and waited nearly 45 minutes before being called. The manager was the same young man in the navy blue suit who had witnessed me sign that stupid paper. He smiled politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Rachel. How can I help you today?" "I'd like to revoke the power of attorney I signed for my son." His smile faded. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He typed a few lines, frowned, and said, "Mrs. Rachel, your account has had multiple Unusual transactions over the past 2 months, totaling over $54,000. I already knew, but hearing it out loud made my chest tighten. That's exactly why I want to revoke it. He handed me a form, asked for 3 signatures, and directed me to get them notarized next door. When I returned, he said, "Your son no longer has access, but I strongly recommend changing all your passwords." I did it right there, card PIN, online login, everything. When I left the bank, my legs trembled, but my chest felt lighter. Step 1, complete. Step 2 was to move the remaining money to another bank so David couldn't trace it. Vanda came with me to a branch across town. I opened a new account under my name only, with no authorized users. I transferred all the remaining savings, $38,000. Out of $127,000, he had burned nearly $90,000 in less than 3 months. But what was left was mine, and no one would touch it. Again, step 3 was gathering evidence. Whenever David went out, I quietly searched the house like a detective. In his room, I found a folder full of contracts, invoices, and estimates all tied to the apartment on Rose Street. I took photos of every page with my phone. I couldn't take the originals he'd notice, but photos would be enough. I discovered he had made a down payment of $65,000, all withdrawn from my account, right before I canceled the authorization. The rest was financed, 12 monthly payments of $2,890 each. And of course, where would those payments come from? My pension. He had planned it perfectly: keep me alive, control me, hand out allowance money while using my savings to build his future, and me, the foolish mother, living off crumbs until the day I died. Each night, I lay in bed staring at the photos on my phone, feeling a cold rage crawl down my spine. Not wild anger anymore, but something sharper, calmer, calculated. David had underestimated me. He thought I was stupid, weak, harmless. But his arrogance would become my weapon. Step 4, the most dangerous: filing the report. Attorney Richard came with me to the police station. I brought every piece of evidence: bank statements, photos, transfer records. The investigator, a man around 50, reviewed them carefully, then said, "You have a solid case. This qualifies as financial theft. Shall I open an investigation? How long will it take?" Hard to say. But with evidence like this, not long. I signed my name and took the receipt with trembling hands. There was no turning back now. The battle had begun, and I would win. In the days that followed, I pretended nothing had changed. I still cooked for him, did his laundry, took my allowance, smiled when he said, "Love you, Mom," and lowered my head when he complained about the food. But inside, I was counting down, planning every move, waiting for the right moment. Vanda called every day. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just a little longer." Then, on a Monday night, after 2 weeks of playing the obedient mother, I struck. I waited for David to go out to meet friends, probably to spend more of my money, and went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and emptied it completely. Beer, frozen dinners, juice, deli meat, all of it went into the trash. Then I wrote a note. "From now on, whoever doesn't earn money doesn't eat. Welcome to the real world." The homeowner. I placed the note inside the empty fridge, closed the door, then sat on the porch in my old rocking chair, wrapped in my mother's knitted shawl, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. His scream tore through the night, sharp enough to make the neighborhood dogs bark in chorus. I kept rocking slowly, gazing at the starry sky. For the first time in 3 months, I smiled. His footsteps thundered on the floor, the door slammed open. David stood before me, face flushed, veins bulging, eyes wide with fury. "What the hell did you do?" I stayed seated, calm. He pointed toward the house, shaking with anger. "The fridge is empty. Where's the food?" "I threw it out," I said evenly. He took a step forward, fists clenched. "Are you insane? How dare you throw out my food?" "Your food?" I stood up slowly. "That's strange because as far as I know, the person who paid for it was me with the money you stole from me." He stumbled back half a step, as if I'd slapped him. "Stole? I didn't steal anything. I was managing it." "Managing? I let out a dry laugh. You burned nearly $90,000 in 3 months, bought an apartment, filled it with furniture, while I lived on eggs and cold rice, surviving on $400 a month from my own money. That's not management. That's theft. His mouth opened and closed, searching for excuses. I was going to tell you about the apartment. When? After you spent it all? Or after I died, so you could inherit the rest? Sweat rolled down his forehead. Mom, I did this for our future. We could rent the apartment, make extra income. Our future? My voice rose. You locked me in this house, cut me off from my friends, handed me allowance money like I was a beggar, bought cheap groceries, treated me like garbage, and you dare talk about a future? He started to speak again, but I cut him off. I bent down, picked up the folder beside my chair, and held it out. You know what I found? You spent $12,400 on flooring, $900 on a refrigerator, $8,200 on furniture, $17,500 on a motorcycle you hid in the garage. Want me to keep going? His face turned pale, almost gray. Mom, how did you get that? From your room. I photographed everything, every receipt, every transfer, every cent you took. He stepped back, nearly tripping. You went through my room? I corrected that, I said coldly. My house. My money. And now. I dropped the folder at his feet, papers scattering around him. Now you'll give it back. He stared at the papers, then at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Give it back? Mom, I don't have the money anymore. It's gone. Then sell the apartment. I can't. It's under my name. I signed a bank loan. That's your problem. He grabbed his head, panicked. You've lost your mind. You can't do this to me. Can't I? I crossed my arms, looking straight at him. David, I already have. I had revoked the authorization, changed every password, moved the remaining money to another account, and filed the theft report. The room went silent. David stared at me like I was someone else, as if he couldn't believe the woman standing before him was the same one he'd crushed for months. You reported me? He stammered. Yes. Because I'm your mother, and you forgot who you were. My voice was firm. You stole from me, humiliated me, isolated me, made me feel worthless, and now you dare demand loyalty? Loyalty is earned, David, and you lost it long ago. He started crying or pretending to. I didn't care anymore. Mom, please, I know I messed up. Give me a chance to fix it. I'll pay you back, slowly. I'll get a job. Enough, I interrupted, my tone calm but icy. Enough lies, enough empty promises, enough using me. I took a folded paper from my purse and handed it to him. You have 48 hours to leave this house. If not, the police will remove you. His hands shook, nearly tearing the notice. You're kicking me out? Yes. But I have nowhere to go. That's no longer my concern. He dropped to his knees before me, clasping his hands. Mom, please. I'm your son. Don't do this. I looked down at the 38-year-old man crying, begging, as if I were still the soft-hearted mother he could manipulate with guilt. But this time, I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no hate. Just a cold emptiness where love used to be. You were right about one thing, I said quietly. I once thought I only needed a small corner to die in, but now I realize I'm not ready to die. And when I do, it'll be on my terms, in my own home, with my dignity. You won't be here to see it. I turned and walked inside. I locked the door, went upstairs, locked it again. That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully, no nightmares, no tossing, no fear. The next morning, when I came downstairs, David was still sitting on the couch, eyes red, face drawn. When he opened his mouth, I raised a hand. I don't want to hear another word from you. I went into the kitchen, made coffee, and ate buttered bread alone, in silence. He stayed there, blank-eyed. The next day, when I came, back from the market, his suitcases were neatly stacked in the living room. He left without saying goodbye, without apologizing, without a note. And my first feeling was relief. But the story wasn't over yet because there was one last secret left to uncover. 3 days after David left, I got a call from my late husband's attorney, Mrs. Esther. "Mrs. Rachel, I need you to come to my office. There's a document I was instructed to hold, per your husband's request." My chest tightened. "What kind of document?" "A letter. He told me to give it to you only if David ever tried to take your property." I froze for a moment. "How did you find out?" "Attorney Richard called me, we're colleagues. He told me about your case." My hands shook as I hung up. Vanda was with me. She'd practically moved in lately to help me get my life back together. I told her. "A letter?" "Yes, I don't know what it says, but we'll find out soon." At the office, Mrs. Esther greeted us with her usual stern expression, but this time, there was something softer in her eyes, sympathy. She pulled out an old envelope, sealed with red wax, the handwriting on it messy but familiar. "To Rachel, open only if David becomes the man I always feared he might." My stomach twisted. "Mrs. Esther handed me the envelope. "He gave this to me 2 years before he passed. He said he was afraid your son might one day take advantage of you and told me to deliver it only if that happened. I suppose that time has come." I held the envelope, feeling its weight, not just paper, but truth. A farewell. I carefully broke the seal. Inside were 3 handwritten pages, the letters shaky and uneven. He must have written them when he was already sick, when he knew his time was short. "Rachel, if you're reading this, it means my fear has come true. David has tried to take what belongs to you, and I'm no longer there to protect you. But there's something I never had the courage to say while I was alive, not because I didn't want to, but because I was ashamed. Ashamed of the son I raised. David was different, even as a child. Not evil at first, just cold. When other kids cried, he laughed. When someone got hurt, he didn't care. Do you remember the neighbor's dog that got hit by a car? He just said, 'It's only an animal.' You told me he was just a thoughtless kid, but I knew better. As David grew older, things got worse. Lying came as naturally to him as breathing. He often stole money from my purse, and I always thought I had dropped it somewhere. He was good at pretending, good at manipulating, using everyone around him to get what he wanted. I tried being strict, tried to teach him right from wrong, but he didn't change, he only learned to hide it better. 3 years ago, he came to me saying he needed to borrow $15,000 to pay off an urgent debt, or he'd be sued. I gave him the money but had my doubts, so I hired someone to investigate. The result, there was no debt. He had used the money to buy an expensive motorcycle to flip for profit. He lied to his own father without a blink. That was when I realized our son was not a good man, and he never would be. I didn't tell you, because I knew you wouldn't believe me. You always defended him, said I was too harsh. Maybe I was strict, but strictness doesn't create a monster. Monsters are born that way. That's why I wrote the will as I did. The house is in your name only, indivisible, and if you pass away, it will go straight to charity, never through anyone else's hands. Because I knew that if he ever had the chance, he would take everything from you. And if you're reading this, it means I was right. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry for leaving you to face this alone. But never blame yourself. You are the best mother any child could ever dream of. This is not your fault, it's his. Be strong. Be free. You've always been stronger than you think. Love you, even if I never said it well, Michael. By the time I reached the last line, tears were streaming down my face. Not from sadness, but from release. I forgave not David, but myself. For months, I had tormented myself, thinking it was my fault, that if I had been different, my son would have been too. But Michael was right. The problem was never me. Vanda finished reading, then took my hand tightly. Your husband loved you, Rachel. In his own way, but it was real. I wiped my tears and nodded softly. I know. Mrs. Esther handed me a tissue and said, there's one more thing. Your husband left instructions that if you ever needed legal support against David, I would represent you for free. He prepaid all legal fees for 5 years. I froze. He did that 2 years before he passed? Yes, Esther said gently. He knew, and he did everything he could to protect you. That night, I sat in my rocking chair, holding the letter to my chest, gazing at the starlit sky as a soft moonlight bathed the porch. I whispered, as if Michael could hear me, Thank you for still protecting me, even from beyond. For the first time since he died, I didn't feel alone. 2 weeks later, David texted me, Mom, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I need help. I have nowhere to stay. Can you lend me a few thousand? I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about replying, about sending money. Then I remembered the letter, everything that had happened, the woman I had become. I replied with one word, no. Then I blocked his number. The war was over. I had won. And the best part was that once you take back control of your life, good things start to unfold. Stay with me, the story is almost over. But the ending, the ending is worth every second. 6 months have passed. Some mornings, I still wake up amazed that this is my life, free, whole, and truly living. Today is one of those mornings. I woke up early. The smell of coffee drifted up from the kitchen. It wasn't me who brewed it, it was Clara, the nursing student who rents the back room, the one that used to be David's. She's 23, with curly hair tied back, a bright smile, and an energy that makes the house feel alive again. She studies in the morning, works at the hospital in the afternoon, and in the evening, we sit together on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. At first, I was hesitant about having someone else live in the house. After everything I'd been through with David, I was afraid to share space again, afraid of being used, afraid of trusting the wrong person. But Vanda told me, Rachel, you need company, but from someone real, not someone who clings to you. Post a room for rent and choose someone who makes you feel comfortable. I did. Clara was the first to reply. She came one Sunday afternoon, shyly holding a small notebook and wearing a nervous smile. She said she was struggling to pay for school, that her family in Ohio couldn't help much. When I looked at her, I saw someone fighting not to take from others, but to stand on her own. I nodded. You can stay. The rent is $650 a month. We'll share the kitchen and bathroom. I cook, you help tidy up, okay? She nearly cried with relief. From that day, my house breathed again. When I went to the kitchen this morning, Clara had already set the table for 2. Scrambled eggs, crispy toast, fresh fruit, hot coffee with milk. She smiled. Good morning, Mrs. Rachel. I'm off today, so I made breakfast for both of us. I sat down, eating slowly, tasting the warmth of food made with kindness. Thank you, sweetheart. She shrugged, smiling even brighter. You cook for me all the time. It's only fair I return the favor sometimes. After breakfast, Clara went to meet her friends. I stayed home, but the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. I opened the closet, took out a shoebox, and inside were my bank statements. Balance, $71,000. David had been ordered by the court to pay me $52,000 in restitution. He'd sold the apartment he bought with my money, losing a fortune because he rushed. Still, the payment came through in full, all documented. My monthly pension was back to $3,240, fully under my control. With the room rent and new savings, I finally had real security. I put the papers away and walked to the living room. The house was different now. I had fixed a few things, not everything, since I still needed to save. I painted the walls a light color, almost white, to make the space feel open. Bought a new sofa, not the turquoise one I'd once dreamed of, but a soft beige that felt like a gentle hug every time I sat down. I replaced the curtains, planted a few pots of flowers on the porch, bought a new fan for the bedroom. Every small change was a quiet declaration. This house is mine. This life is mine. At exactly 10 o'clock, the gate bell rang. It was Vanda, coming to pick me up for our Wednesday women's group. I put on the new floral blouse I'd bought with my own money and felt light as air. On the way, she asked, as she always did, "You doing okay?" "I'm great," I smiled. And this time, it was true. We met in a small church hall, 12 women, all over 60, each carrying her own story, some widowed, some abandoned, some like me, betrayed by their own children. We shared, laughed, cried, cooked, and found hope in one another. Today was my turn to speak. The coordinator, Mrs. Ellen, with silver hair and kind eyes, invited me to the center of the circle. Rachel, would you like to share your story with everyone? I took a deep breath and began. I spoke about David, about control, about fear, but also about Michael's letter, about justice, and about new beginnings. When I finished, many women were in tears, not out of pity, but because they saw themselves in my story. A woman named Carmen, 72, raised her hand. My son manages all my money, says it's to help me, but I'm too scared to fight back. I looked at her and said clearly, "You have to fight back before it's too late. No one's coming to save you. Only you can do that." She nodded, tears streaming down, but her eyes shone. After the meeting, Vanda took me to our favorite restaurant, a cozy place with home-style food. We ordered cheesy grilled beef, white rice, baked beans, and fries, eating and chatting like old times. "You look different," Vanda said. "Different how?" "Lighter, more like yourself," I laughed. "Because I am myself again." That evening, I returned home to a surprise on the porch. A large box wrapped in brown paper, tied with a red ribbon, and a card that read, "Thank you, Mrs. Rachel, for giving me a home when no one else believed in me. You are the mother I always wished I had. Love, Clara." My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside was a sea green knitted blanket, handmade, in my favorite color. I sat down in my rocking chair, wrapped it around my shoulders, and cried, not from sadness, but from gratitude, from belonging, from love. That's when I understood the most important truth. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who stay, who care, and who choose to walk beside you. That night, sitting on the porch under the starry sky, I thought about everything, about David, about Michael, about the fragile woman I once was, and the person I had become. I realized you have to fall to learn how to rise, lose to understand what's truly valuable, and hit the bottom to discover how strong you still are. David never reached out again after I blocked him. Neighbors said he rented a small apartment and got a steady job. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter anymore. He's no longer my responsibility. I did my duty. As a mother, raised him, loved him, protected him, and he chose another path. That choice is his, and so are its consequences. I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Michael, for believing I was strong enough." "You were right." Then I said softly to myself, "Thank you, Rachel, for not giving up." Because true wealth isn't what we own, it's what we refuse to let others take from us. And the most precious thing of all is our self-respect. Some wounds never heal the way we expect, but time and courage turn them into scars, not painful anymore, just reminders of how strong we were to survive. I once thought a mother's love was an unbreakable bond, but now I understand love must be nurtured with respect and honesty. When someone only takes and never gives, that's not love, it's a burden. It took me nearly a lifetime to learn one simple truth. Loving your child doesn't mean losing yourself, because only when you preserve your dignity and self-respect can you truly give love that's real. Family, after all, isn't where you endure, it's where you belong, where you find peace, and where you are loved. And have you ever had to stand up for yourself against the people you love? Share your story in the comments, because I believe each of us has our own journey to reclaim strength and faith. And if you want to keep walking with me through stories of resilience, love, and freedom, follow the channel so we never lose each other along the way.